If I could get your attention, you want everybody.
Folks, let's bring it in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's your meeting, bro, not mine.
Well, you got a bigger hand than I have, maybe.
I can say a lot of things right there, but I'm not gonna say.
We'll leave that one, both of us. First, I'd like to say welcome to our.
Charles, can I get you to pull a microphone in front of you?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Charles Hilton Cab. I'd like to say thank you to all our committee members for being here on time and for us making our quorum status. Thank you to the public or any other interested people that are here. We welcome you. We'll hear from you at a later point in our meeting. And with that, we will continue on. We have several things that we do need to discuss. We need to check, is there anyone on the telephone? We're not showing anyone on the phone. Dan, I can't. Okay, Dan, you're there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, I got you now. Thank you. Michael, are you doing the DOE or Randy or who's?
Randy.
Randy will, and it looks like he just, you picked a bed. Oh, there it is.
They told me I could sit.
You're the cloak of invisibility.
Just today.
Yeah.
Randy will give it to you.
Okay. As you said, thank you. And as was said, I'm doing this for Maxine today. She wasn't available. In H Canyon, we've processed 5 batches of HIFER, high flux isotope reactor fuel, and 2 batches of material test reactor fuel in FY19 so far. So the stats that brings us up to is 40 of the 200 HIFER cores that are in the AROD, and 236 of the 1,000 MTR bundles have been processed to date. With respect to the target residue material, that processing campaign continues. We've currently received up through shipment 84. In K area, the required DE was completed. So, and 25 of 25 3013 containers have been down blended this fiscal year. L area continues to support fuel receipts from foreign and domestic research reactors and transfers of spent nuclear fuel to H Canyon for processing. 15 domestic research reactor receipts and 14 foreign research reactor receipts have been received to date in FY19. And in Building 235, we continue to work on stabilizing materials and reducing risk. We're working on actions to put us in a position to recommend closure of 2012-1 and request that closure from the board. So far, the totals as far as the material removed for 235F is at about 237 grams. Now, those are the assays that are taken of the physical material that is removed. You'll hear about assays that are different that they do of the cells, but this is actually an actual assay of the bucket of stuff as they haul it out. But that adds up to 237 grams total. Distributed amongst cell 1, cell 2, and then the maintenance wing cabinet that's attached to cell 1. And then we have, the date escapes me, I think it was July, but we've directed the contractor to stop removal of the material at risk from the puff cells. We have had very preliminary discussions, informal, I guess would be the best way to characterize it, with the regulators, and we have a pretty good feeling that we may be able to negotiate a successful end state for the building and may not have to remove any more material. So if that's the case, it really doesn't make any sense to put people at risk in there hauling stuff out that you may not have to haul out. So we've stopped for the time being. We're currently working through that. That's kind of where the building is. That's kind of where we're at on 235. Any questions? Dave? Oh, go ahead.
Dave Oz, the cab. You didn't mention NRU, NRX. Are you declaring victory on that?
The reason I'm pausing is that we're done receiving NRU, NRX, but I believe there's some public announcements for the people that are paying for the work that haven't happened yet. So,
So, PR.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Charles Hilton Cab. Randy, not to put you on the spot, but to put you
But
on the
you're gonna.
spot, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Recommendation 364,
Yeah.
which is pending, waiting comments back from DOE.
That's the 235F one, right?
Yes, 235F, yes.
Okay.
363 is H Canyon, 364 is 235F. From what I'm hearing, that we're stopping removal. We've done that. We're in negotiations to accelerate closure of the facility is, I think, what I'm hearing, which is implied that acceptance of the recommendation may be coming.
I wouldn't say that we're in negotiations yet because we haven't, that's a very formal process and we haven't actually entered into that. But we have had some preliminary discussion. As you might guess, if you're going to go deactivate a facility and you've got the people in there doing the work, it'd be really beneficial to have some idea of what the actual end state at the conclusion of decommissioning would be, because the last thing you want to do is get done deactivating and then they go have all the negotiations with the regulators and you find out you have to go back in there and do more work when the crew's gone, so we've started some very preliminary informal discussions with the regulators just to kind of gauge, are we kind of in the ballpark with where we would like to go with the facility. And those, at least it's my characterization. I don't know how the regulators would characterize it, but I thought those were very positive discussions. So with respect to the recommendation, I actually am the one that has to draft it. I've started, it's working, and our current path has us on a path to solve some of the issues that are still outstanding with the board's recommendation, primarily fire, and we're working on that. And then also we're working on continuing to develop, getting better plans. I mean, we've had some rough ones. We're starting to sharpen our pencils a lot better and get better plans, schedules, and estimates for actually taking the facility to the deactivated state, which our target is a cold and dark facility. We believe we will probably be successful. Well, I don't know if we'll be successful, but we believe we'll be in a good position to request closure of the board's recommendation relatively soon, months, not years. The deactivation of the facility, years is kind of unfair, a couple of years. I mean, the time frame really hasn't changed significantly from when I briefed you guys. It's still very December-ish of calendar year 21 to the first quarter of calendar year 22, sometime in there. Like I said, we're still refining the schedules and the activities that have to get done to pull that off. But that's kind of sort of where it's probably going to land, give or take a few months.
So Mike Michaelis, DOE, just not to get out ahead of the manager's acceptance or partial acceptance or rejection of a recommendation, I think it would be fair, Charles, to say that the department's actions are consistent with what the CAB recommended. We're working to get. Do you have a forecast, Randy, as to when you think we'll have a reply back to the committee?
I hope to have it out of our shop before the next full board meeting. I hope to have it out to everybody else to look at and provide me input on in another week or so.
The recommendation gave us insight into what the CAB thought. We factored that into the planning and how we were moving forward. And as Randy said, we're real close to being able to announce some significant pivots within the facility and how we're deactivating it. I'm just not willing to pop the champagne cork yet. We brought in an outside expert to assist SRS, or we didn't bring one in. SRS brought a company renowned for its expertise in fire analysis to help them go look at the potential for fires within the facility and how we might make the hazard go away to address the board's recommendation. That was a very positive interaction. We got some good results. It was draft. The expert is writing the report. We're expecting it by the end of the month. And once we have that technical basis finalized and approved by the consultant, we'll then have a basis for changing the facility's fire hazard analysis and addressing the board's recommendation without further ado. So a lot of work going on still. I hesitate to get into what is and is not there because of some small detail changes, and I know there were a couple points that the consultant suggested we go off and address, and I'd just like to make sure I see the draft report before we start talking about exactly what they recommended we do to mitigate any potential for a fire and what kind of actions we'll take in the facility. But we're making progress, and it is consistent with what the CAB recommended, which I think what your question was.
Thank you for that. One final question from me. You said we removed approximately 237 grams of material. Is my memory right? 450 to 500 grams were estimated in there?
In,
In 1 and 2, I think.
I've slept since I looked at that number. No, I think the total of around 500 or so grams was for all of puff.
The whole.
But most of what is in puff is in 1 and 2.
So basically, we removed 50% of it anyway.
About a little less, yeah.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mike McLance theory. We'll take an action. That's what Randy thinks it is. I'm not sure myself. If I had my little green paper brain, I could have gone back and looked a couple months and told you exactly what the numbers were. But we'll take a look up to get that to you.
It's not good. I'm off my memory too.
We've announced those numbers in the past. Getting them and just refreshing it for the record would be a good thing to do. Yeah, we're close.
Yeah, you're close. That's pretty
Yeah, they're, I know the tables have been, if not the last presentation, the one before that I did, but I'll get into it.
Thank you. Other questions? Anything else?
I'm done.
You're off the hook.
well, for the time being.
He's Maxine for the night.
I didn't hear anybody tell me I'm dismissed yet.
Thank you, Randy. We do appreciate that update on that. Next item of discussion is the presentation that we had at our last meeting, the EM plutonium disposition strategy. Does everyone have the handout? It's available. Do you need it? Are there any questions, concerns? Narendra?
Narendra Morik. This schedule which Maxine presented, that disposition of plutonium in K area will take about it will be done by 2046. Is that schedule confirmed or it can change?
I'm going to go out on a limb. I think the answer is it could change, but I think that's the current best estimate of the schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments concerning the presentation?
Dave Isley, CAB. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the draft recommendation. I'm just wondering if this is accepted by the department, is there some action to get a priority from WIP? Because it doesn't help the state of South Carolina to take it out of K area and put it over in the burial grounds or whatever you call it nowadays and not leave. Does the recommendation need to have something along that line? The priority would need to be pushed up.
The issue, Gil Allen's Cap, the issue that we run into with that, Dave, is we start talking about breaking recommendations off-site, and that gets out of our purview.
Okay, so is it implied that would have to happen or not our business?
I can't answer the implied question, but I've been frustrated before. So, I think, in my opinion, and I mean, I'm just one guy here, but that's about as far as we can. That's about as far as we can go, unless DOE says we can go somewhere. We can go somewhere else, but it goes outside of our purview if we get outside the fence, right?
Before, if I may, before we start taking this apart and putting it back together, let me get through the rest of the, there's no questions on this. I want to do the AMCAP fuel inspection, get that out of the way, because this is gonna take the majority of our time. But let's make sure that we get everything on the agenda out of the way. So if there's no questions on the actual presentation, I'm gonna put this on hold and come back to it in a few minutes. All right, okay.
AK Hassan Kaya. In your presentation, you mentioned about the concerns about fire activity in closing the facility down, 235F, et cetera.
Yes.
In terms of seismic activity, is that a natural part of closing a facility? Do you also consider that, or?
Yeah, the seismic activity is considered when they go do the safety analysis.
Right.
But the real thing that was driving our hazard and the big scary numbers that were out there was the fire. So if we can, to the extent we can prevent the fire from impacting the radioactive material, then we can eliminate or nearly eliminate that part of the equation, and that makes a significant difference. I mean, big significant orders of magnitude difference.
Thank you.
Or is there any other questions on either 235F or either on the EU plutonium disposition strategy? If not, I'm going to move on to the update on AMCAP fuel inspections. Being someone that's been involved in water chemistry all of my life, that was a pretty interesting presentation. Learned some new things. Yeah, exactly. I have a slide rule on my phone.
That's who you are.
Jim?
Yeah, Jim Gill, CAP. One question on the AMCAP fuel inspections. There is a number of spent nuclear fuel aluminum clad out in Idaho, I believe. Is that subject to the same rigorous inspection since it has a chance of coming here?
I don't know the answer to that. I would be guessing.
Mr. Rose knows.
Dave Rose, Seminary
Hate to
Nuclear
put you on the spot.
Yeah. Seminary Nuclear Solutions. I'm not an expert. I can't speak for Idaho. I've been there. I've seen their facility. I've seen their storage facilities. I can tell you what I saw was a well-run facility, and from all appearances appeared to be very good. But I can't speak to what their surveillance program is. It would be up to them to manage that.
Yeah, Michael Michelin, DOE. We're not in a position to share, and it's out of personal. None of us have knowledge of what Idaho's inspections are, what their basin water is like, or anything. None of us are in a position to be able to describe their program. But anything that was transferred down to the Savannah River site would have to meet certain acceptance criteria that we would establish before it comes into our facility. The way we manage the transfer of materials between facilities or between accountabilities is that the transferring organization needs to meet certain acceptance criteria. We call it waste acceptance criteria before it can enter the facility. That makes sure that whatever is received, whether it's a transfer from the tank farms into the Defense Waste Processing Facility, from L Basin into the canyon, that the materials being transferred are bounded by the safety and hazard analysis and the chemical processing, et cetera, that would go on within those facilities. So we would have acceptance criteria before we would ever receive any material from another site or another facility into the basins, and that's the way we currently receive our fuel now from the transfer programs.
Charles Hilton, CAB. Michael, does that mean that DOE / SR, NL, whoever, would send a crew to Idaho and inspect these things before they get in South Carolina? Or would you just get a letter from them that says everything's wonderful?
Mike McElhaney's DOE, that depends right now there's no such transfer on the books. And it's something that we've talked about, but there's an awful lot of politics associated with any transfers into or out of the state of Idaho. And I doubt that our constituents in South Carolina would be happy with us accepting material into the state that didn't have a corresponding amount going back into Idaho. And Idaho's been very clear, and they believe they have some decree in place that moratorium, that there's no more material coming into Idaho. So the whole discussion of how we would do that, I would say, would be predicated upon the conditions and what we have at the time such an agreement were to manifest itself. So, to some, depending upon what Idaho had and what they were proposing to send to us and what condition it was in, we could rely on their quality assurance program because their programs are overseen by the same agency. May not be my office, but a number of people just like me out at the Idaho field office, and they would be operating to the same rules and same requirements that we would. So if they certify and they say, yep, this is what the packaging is and it meets the compliance, then I would accept that. Now, if it's particularly tricky or unusual, I am sure their contractor or their feds would request some of our folks to come out and bring their subject matter expertise to help them prepare whatever transportation documentation would be needed.
Thank you.
That's the best answer I can give you on a hypothetical that you
I
just
understand.
posed.
You want facts?
It was just
You
interesting.
can't
One of the comments was that Idaho says nothing comes in and out. South Carolina says it goes out, but nothing happens. So it's just an interesting observation. But we did get another half ton out last week, I think.
Well, Mike McElhaney, Steve, if I said Idaho doesn't want anything out, I'm sure they want anything out. They're just not taking anything into the state.
Okay. Other comments, questions on the field inspections and the overall program? Okay. Now we get to the meat. James, could you pull up the
Heather will get it up for
Heather,
us.
can you pull up plutonium processing? You should have a draft recommendation for board discussion or for committee discussion. Plutonium processing recommendation managers are Greg Murray and Norenda. I got this probably 2 weeks ago. Greg sent it to me, or either Norenda sent it to me. I purposely did not comment. I thought this was a committee discussion. My opinion did not enter into it at this point in time. We'll go tonight. I may have an opinion, but we'll see. Greg is not here. Norenda, will you introduce this? And has everybody seen this or read it prior to coming into this meeting tonight? If not, we will read the entire thing. Has everybody read it? Jerry, have you had a chance to see it? If I think everybody's seen it and read it, would you just hit the highlights, what prompted it, and go through it, and then I want you to actually read the recommendation.
Read the whole of it.
No, just what you're recommending, that one
Okay.
paragraph.
Narendra Malakab, I think in last full board meeting, Maxine presented a presentation on plutonium processing, and the analysis was that it's going to, dispositioning will take up to 2046, and we were wondering why that long, and the reason was because there is only one shift and there is only one glove box, and NSSA is also working there, so probably in another shift they are using the glove box. So to expedite it, I'll read it now. The CAB recommends that DOE take the steps necessary to accelerate the dispositioning of the 6 metric tons of surplus plutonium and to complete the disposition process no later than 2036. The steps should include, but not limited to, allocating the necessary resources and additional funding for additional shift, for this downblending, including the acquisition of additional glove box if necessary, and oxidation capabilities. And we highlighted three advantages of that, and the risk reduction, accelerated removal of surplus plutonium will reduce hazard to the citizen of the central Savannah River area, workers as SRS, and the environment, and the current trained workforce available now to expedite the dispositioning process, and reduces the surveillance and maintenance cost to the public. This is for the future and the ultimate financiers of the SRS projects.
Okay, thank you, Narendra. We'll open this for discussion. Dave?
Dave Isley, Cab. I got no problem with this. Thing's very well written. There's a couple things that I wonder about factuality. My experience with plutonium, if you're talking metallic plutonium, it's not particularly toxic chemically. So, we got to be careful when we write these things that everything's accurate.
Where is that word comes to?
I'm looking at the fourth line. Plutonium is highly toxic. I would dwell on the oxidized state and the inhalation hazard. It's nasty stuff. Michael, Randy, help me out. Dave used to mess with plutonium.
I don't think it's in Randy Clendenning, DOE. My opinion from former lives is I don't think it's that incorrect to say plutonium is highly toxic. It's nasty stuff, even if it's still a metal.
Okay.
And Mike McAlance, DOE, I would also agree with Randy. I would encourage you, you're not a scientific panel. You're not expected to get all the nuances of the science and the technology correct. Whether it's toxic or carcinogenic through the radionuclides that it would emit, the radiation that it would emit, we'll sort that out. I think the point that you're trying to make comes across in the front paragraph, and I understood the context from what was written in it.
Okay. I'll
Narendra
accept
Malik,
that.
the word we picked up was based on what the presentation was, and it's our simple English language, because Greg is a PhD in political science, so we use the words which fit us, and I think knowing is very dangerous stuff, so he called it toxic. So
Okay, that's fine. I accept that. Number two, last line of that first one says some of the surplus plutonium, this is the 6 metric tons, is weapons grade. I used to work in cams, and that was somebody else's stuff. We're not gonna
well,
talk-
initially we put it unstable, and we were told it's not unstable, it's weapon grade.
Help me, DOE.
Mike McAlance, DOE, I saw that also when I reviewed it tonight, and I made a note to talk to Maxine about it. She's my resident expert on that, and right now she's on an airplane, so I'm not able to call her and talk to her about it.
Yeah, well-
But we'll fact check that.
Okay, please do that. My experience, having worked in that facility, the 6 metric tons is junk, and to call it weapons grade is.
Narendra Malik, I think last time I did ask this question when Maxine was making presentation. Does it have a fissile material? She said yes.
Well, that's being fissile and being weapons grade are two entirely different
We are
things.
not expert. We just use those words. Fissile means for me it can be weapon grade. So let DOE make a decision on that.
Gil Answer's tab, it's in the recommendation, it's not in the recommendation portion, it's in the background portion. So, I mean, it is proper to be accurate and correct, but when it comes to DOE, they're going to look at the recommendation portion, and they're not going to take weapons grade into account when they review the recommendation.
Okay, take a due out. DOE and, checked with Maxine on that. It says is weapons grade. Anything that's plutonium can be made weapons grade, but as the 6 metric tons exist, I rather doubt it's weapons grade.
So, Mike McElhaney, DOE. Although I just told you you're not a scientific and technical body, you guys put down what you think, and we'll sort out what it really means. Weapons grade is not equivalent to being fissile, and this is one that has political connotations as far as weapons grade and non-weapons grade, and gets to that kind of level of detail. I'm not sure I would necessarily want that in a CAB recommendation. That kind of background may not be important to it, but let me go pull the string with Maxine to make sure my understanding of what's in my facility matches hers, which she has the historical record that I lack. So we will take an action, and James will help me with it. We will feed you the correct information. You will write it any way you wish, just like the point that Gil made earlier. This is your recommendation to write. We will research the question that you've asked, because you've interpreted what we've shared with you in a way that's noted in your footnotes, and we will fact check that for you and provide feedback to you to use any way you wish. This is one that it is important enough to me to go commit to an action item on.
Okay, thank you for that. And last one, there's 2 places in the first one's in the second background paragraph, and then the recommendation, you talk about oxidation capabilities. With HB shut down, HB line shut down, there are no oxidation capabilities out there. CAM certainly doesn't have it. And again, going back on my memory, the 6 metric tons is all oxidized anyway. So I'm wondering whether that's just a flyer.
Malik, the information we have picked up is from the presentation she made it. So if there were some words, we use those words.
Okay. Well, CAMS doesn't have a oxidation capability.
As
so-
Mike said that he will verify it with Maxine.
Okay, I need to hear Mike say that.
I'm saying it for him. I'll check that. We can add it.
You know what, I mean, and that's the thing is, Michael, I was just kind of talking offline, even we're breaking the rules.
Okay.
It was me, it wasn't DOE. If Maxine was here, we'd have the answer, we'd have it. So, I mean, let's not get bogged down.
Okay, the reason I bring it up, it's very important to me that these things be as accurate as we can make them. Otherwise,
Right, and that's
our
the-
credibility.
Well, and that's the point. We are. I mean, I know you have a tremendous scientific background that most of us here don't. Well, comparatively, you do, which we don't have. So for us to get bogged down, because that's what's happening to us. But if Maxine was here, we'd be able to knock it out. Let's just move forward with them. Okay, thanks.
I agree totally, but at the same time, the words highly toxic, weapons grade, are highly inflammatory words to the public. And they are also politically noticed. I've been in this business too long, dealing with the public. And what comes from both this committee as well as full cab needs to be accurate. And that's where I would appreciate Randy, Michael, Maxine. Let's make sure we get this language correct before it goes out as public document.
So Charles, you just summarized the basis for why I agreed to take a couple actions perfectly. Thank you.
And even if it's not correct at this point, I mean, like if we wordsmith it and it's not correct, it's going to get fixed at full boards.
Okay. Still needs to be brought out.
Right.
Okay. Charles Hilton, cab, and this is from the presentation, Randy, thank you. 6 metric tons is composed of both weapons grade and fuel grades plutonium with various impurities. So that was directly from the DOE presentation.
I said that we took the
So-
words from.
That clarifies the weapons grade. I no longer have a problem with that. I just have highly toxic that's just an inflammatory word. Is there a better way to say it?
Why, when it's something is nuisance and we call it toxic sometimes.
It's more
Sometimes
than,
people
it's
use-
more than a nuisance.
Some people use bad language, and we call it, they use toxic language.
All right, do we want to start wordsmithing this thing, or do we want to, how do we want to handle this? Do we think we have enough knowledge to wordsmith tonight? Nope.
I think we should move on and recommend to the full board before the full board votes, and that we will have comments and suggestions from Maxine.
All right, that's gonna delay a full board meeting. What that will do is, this committee will not meet again until the month following our next board meeting. So that's gonna delay this 3 months.
It won't get the board, it won't get the full board till December.
No,
But that's
it
not
would
gonna
be
make any
November.
difference, cause this will affect budget if
So-
DOE accepts this recommendation. And where are you in the budgeting process? I never can keep up with that.
Up to our ears.
Y'all up in probably 2025 now anyway.
Here's what we can do is that you guys can decide, look at the actual recommendation itself. Is that little section on oxidation capabilities, whether that's something that can be cut at the full board depending on the responses on accuracy. You know, that doesn't change the heart of the recommendation, which is increasing the speed with which this process is done. So unless you think that those answers are going to change your mind on whether or not this should move to the full board, I think that you can move this as is, knowing that you're probably going to do some more editing there just a little bit.
Yeah, Mike
I can
McAleese.
accept that we look at the problem areas for the committee. We highlight those, send them to DOE for clarification. We get that back. James, you might could
Yeah.
do a little wordsmithing. You've helped me before. Send it back to committee. We can't vote electronically yet.
Well, we won't
Okay,
even need to
close.
do that. You can vote on it tonight because you're not going to change what the recommendation itself is based off of those answers, I don't think. What you're going to do is just pull out some words, and again, we can do that at the full board, and that'll be okay.
All right, I need to hear from the full committee what you're comfortable with on this.
Dave Isley Cab, I'm for this thing. All I was doing was picking up the language. This is a great idea.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm for it, and I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and send it to the full cab, subject to the information that we've requested from DOE to help us make a final decision at the cab in terms of wordsmithing, et cetera. No.
All right, I have a motion from AK, a second from Dave, I think. All right, it's open for discussion now.
Mr. Chairman, while I have the mic, I do want to just understand how much of this recommendation impacts on our present situation with 235F, with glove boxes, you know, that type thing. And I think it's already been noted that the missions can change, but I just want to understand if this motion impacts that and to what extent.
I'm gonna give that to Randy, but I think 235 is beyond usage, if that is the question, if those glove boxes could be reused. And Randy, either you or Michael.
Well, Randy Clendenning, DOE, unless you want to field it, Michael. This goes into all the things out there that we juggle. I mean, we budget year to year. The question came up, we're currently in the preliminary parts of starting to build the 21 budget. So throwing money at 235F, if the department were to accept this recommendation, that would be something that would have to be factored into those discussions. There are, I mean, it's just a fact of our life, there are finite resources, but I don't know that, you guys have to decide what you want to send to the department, and then if the department accepts it, figuring out how to get it funded is on us.
Exactly.
And
It's not my problem.
well, yeah, and relative to your, if it helps any in your deliberations on the weapons grade, the plutonium discussion you were having, it is in the presentation you were given. You can hang your hat on that. I know a little bit about some of the plutonium, and it would be very difficult to get into a discussion
Thank you.
that's much more specific than what we've said in an open forum.
Correct.
Okay. And I understand that completely.
And Mike McLean's TV, that's why I wanted Maxine to make sure we looked at what you did so that I'm not crossing into areas I shouldn't be getting into in a public forum. And AK, Randy put it perfectly. I'll expand it with the following. You've heard Lopez come out and discuss with the board how the appropriations process works. Congress gives us money for a range of things, and then the Office of Management and Budget puts further control points at a little lower level. The work for 235F is in a different bin of money than where K area comes from. So anything you recommend or anything that we would do in K area in plus up of work or minusing of work would not correlate to extra money for the other facility or vice versa, because they come out of they're funded by two different bins of money that are separated by a control point that's given to us. So, and there's no intermixing of equipment between them either, because we're looking at going cold and dark and deactivating 235F and there's no material in there that we think we can surplus and move over to another facility.
AK, we went everywhere, but I'm not sure we addressed exactly what you asked. I think your question was, could 235F be used, those glove boxes be used in the down blending process? Was that,
No, I was just.
or you were concerned about the money flow going here and there?
No, I was just concerned about visualizing the how the materials were being removed from 32, 35F, et cetera, and the fact that I'm thinking that those are glove boxes that are involved in that, and if that's the case, I was just wondering just what that meant overall in terms of whether it was going to affect the new direction that DOE has for 235F or impact the current mission. I just didn't understand the correlation between them.
Randy Clendenning, DOE. If I understand it correctly, the glove boxes that we have in 235F that we're working on deactivating are different than what they use in K area, and they're really not. They don't have anything to do with one another.
And-
My understanding too of those glove boxes is that you can't make them work anyway.
And Mike McLean's
Thank you.
we're also talking we're talking completely different orders of magnitude of quantities. In 235F, we're talking gram quantities of radioactive material. In K area, we're talking
Metric tons.
metric tons of material. So, whereas yes, we believe we can demonstrate through technical analyses that are consistent with practices of the industry that grouting up the facility or some other end state will provide appropriate protection for the public worker environment, thousands of years in the future. We're not going to be in any position to make an argument like that regarding metric tons of radioactive material. So that completely different situation there. Even though there is a hazard with downblending and sticking workers' hands in and working with the materials, that's an activity that still has to be done, and it's not an optional thing of, oh geez, do I continue to pull out material? Do I have to do it to be protective of the environment and the public? So it's a different set of drivers there. But if we were down to those kinds of quantities in K area, I'd be asking the exact same question of myself, and do I really want to put the workers' hands at risk to pulling out the last micro curie of material?
Jerry Mossberger, Cab. Why was 2036 chosen?
I think it's, Greg must have some idea. He might have talked to somebody.
I'm sorry?
Move it up 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It was 2046 originally. So what's the significance of 10 years? Should it be 15 years? Should it be 7 years?
He just picked it up. I don't know. He may have talked to somebody about that. I'm not sure about that.
We're getting it out of here quicker than we were.
The intent was to reduce that. We are going to reduce the timeline by 10 years.
Why wouldn't we ask for 20 years? I mean, I'm just
I understand, but
asking.
I don't know the reason.
All right.
I can't answer that.
I'm on either we're on schedule for public comments right now.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop the discussions. We're gonna have public comments. We're gonna come back and we're gonna finish this up, okay? James, do we have any public comments? Has anybody signed up?
So we don't do sign-ups at committee
Okay.
meetings, but if we just ask if there's anybody that wants to make a public comment, now would be the time.
Drawn some interest. It's a learning process for me.
All right. Charles, I'd say that's good.
Hmm?
You're good.
All right, we'll move on with the discussion, okay?
Charles.
Jim?
Jim Gill Cap. In Maxine, or in the presentation, we make a point of all the material being shipped to WIP. Should that be part of the recommendation? Open question.
I think that is not our intent. Our intent is to get some funding for accelerating the processing and get an extra glove box so that we can have extra shift on that. No, we did not consider about WIP shipment, no.
So whether the material's shipped to WIP or stored is not going to be part of this recommendation?
No, we didn't consider that.
Other comments, questions?
Actually, my intent was to send it through Waste Management Committee because we consider it as a true waste going to WIP. But James won the game. He said, no, it's Nuclear Materials Committee. So credit goes to...
Okay. Hearing no other discussion, no other questions, we'll call for the question then. All in favor of the recommendation, subject to wordsmithing without changing any of the intent, but subject to clarification of some of the wording by Maxine or other DOE personnel. All in favor of the recommendation, say aye.
Can I
All
get an
opposed,
actual,
likes?
can I get a hand count, please?
Okay, all in favor? I don't know which Robert's rules. I'm in favor of it, but normally chairman can't vote. I can vote?
Yeah.
James, I'm assuming I don't get to vote, right?
You do.
Yes, you get to vote on this, don't
It just doesn't count for a quorum.
At this time.
But you do get to vote, Dan.
I vote yes.
you? Okay. All right, then. All opposed? And it's carried unanimously. James, if you'll get this to Maxine for clarification. And when
We'll
she
ask.
gets the clarification, I would like for it to be sent back to full committee for comment.
Oh, absolutely.
Just make sure that's the way we're going. I know we can't take any action at that point, but I would like the committee to see it. That is everything that's on our agenda. Are there other items of business that need to come up before us? Okay.
A.K. Hassan Cab. I was wondering if, I know it could automatically be assumed as premature, but I was wondering if we might want to start as a committee to look toward, with DOE, putting forth the issue of characteristically classifying various levels of waste, high level waste, et cetera, might we want to start having some presentations that will enable us shortly after some decision is made regarding that as to how we label perhaps existing waste so that we can, I don't know whether we would have any input into that or not, but if so, maybe we need to start laying the foundation for that.
Well, the
to happen.
definitions of waste are subject to a whole lot of goings on right now.
Well, they're
We had-
statutory.
Yeah, right now, the classifications are statutory, but those are looking at now the interpretation based on the last meeting that we had.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, that might be beyond our purview in terms of what we are being asked to do as a committee. But if not, you know, I'm just saying, do we need to prepare for it and start to look to be educated about that? And
Well, if there's questions, we definitely need to look at it. Let me talk to James and Maxine, and let's see what we can, especially for our newer members, that might be something we need to look at again. All right, what else?
that's all I have.
I'm not gonna belabor the point. There's no other business, the meeting is adjourned.